The most boring book of the Bible, that's what many people call Leviticus, animal sacrifices, skin diseases, rules about mold. For centuries, scholars dismissed it as primitive superstition, irrational taboos from a pre-scientific age. They were wrong. Anthropologists now study Leviticus as a sophisticated symbolic system, a window into how ancient Israel constructed their entire worldview around sacred order. This book isn't random, it's a carefully designed architecture of meaning. So who created this system? The priestly school, a group of priests responsible for everything related to Israel's sanctuary. Their jurisdiction covered cultic rituals, the sacrificial system, and one crucial distinction: holy versus profane, pure versus impure. Cultic here means formal religious worship, not the modern sense of cult. These priests developed their materials over centuries, preserving ancient traditions while reaching their final written form during and after the Babylonian exile around 586 BCE. Leviticus has a clear five-part structure that reveals priestly priorities. Chapters 1 through 7 establish the sacrificial system. Chapters 8 through 10 cover priestly installation, specifically Aaron and his descendants. Chapters 11 through 15 address dietary and purity laws. Chapter 16 focuses entirely on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, and chapters 17 through 26 contain what scholars call the Holiness Code. Notice the progression. From ritual mechanics at the bottom to ethical holiness at the top. This structure has a logic. Here's something crucial. Leviticus contains two distinct priestly traditions. P, the priestly source, covers chapters 1 through 16. H, the Holiness Code, covers chapters 17 through 26. P focuses on ritual mechanics and the purity regulations. H adds ethical dimensions, famously commanding, "Be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy." H came later and served as the editor or redactor of P. Recognizing these two voices helps us trace how priestly thinking evolved over time. For a long time, scholars completely missed the point. 19th and early 20th century academics viewed impurity rules as irrational taboos. They called sacrifice controlled savagery, primitive religion from primitive people. Then came the anthropological turn. Researchers began studying danger avoidance practices across cultures and discovered something remarkable. These systems aren't random. They encode deep cultural values about order, boundaries, and cosmic structure. The pivot point came in the mid-20th century with one scholar in particular. Mary Douglas transformed everything. Her work on purity and danger demonstrated that impurity rules across cultures reflect symbolic systems about order and boundaries. Applied to Leviticus, this insight proved revolutionary. Dietary laws distinguishing clean from unclean animals aren't arbitrary preferences. They reflect categories of cosmic order. Animals that fit their category, like fish with fins and scales, are clean. Animals that blur boundaries, like shellfish, are unclean. The system maps Israel's understanding of how the world should be organized. Scholars like Jacob Milgram and Jonathan Clowens built on Douglas's foundation, viewing priestly texts as a coherent system. At its heart lies a framework with two axes. The first axis, holy versus profane, meaning common or ordinary. The second axis, pure versus impure. These aren't random categories. They form a comprehensive worldview that organizes all of reality. The priests manage the boundaries between these states, protecting sacred space while enabling ordinary Israelites to navigate their relationship with the divine. Look at the quadrants: holy and pure, the sanctuary, priests in active service; profane and pure, ordinary Israelite life, the normal state; profane and impure, someone who touched a corpse or has a skin disease. This requires purification rituals before approaching sacred space. But holy and impure, that combination is dangerous, forbidden. The entire system exists to prevent it. Impurity must never contact holiness. This explains why purification matters so much. One common misconception: purity equals morality, impurity equals sin. Not true. Ritual impurity from childbirth, disease, or contact with death is often natural and unavoidable. Right? A woman after childbirth isn't sinful. A person who buries their parent isn't wicked. The system manages sacred space, not moral judgment. Purification rituals restore access to the sanctuary. They don't forgive sins. Understanding this distinction prevents us from reading later moral frameworks back into the priestly system. The priests cared about cosmic order, not moral condemnation. So how do we read Leviticus today? Right? When encountering a strange rule, ask, what boundary is being drawn here? What does this distinction symbolize about Israel's relationship to God and the world? Recognize that rules encoding clean and unclean, holy and common, reveal what ancient Israel considered sacred and dangerous. Apply the anthropological lens. Any religious or cultural system's rules expose its deepest values about order and community identity. Leviticus isn't primitive superstition. It's a sophisticated symbolic architecture. The priests who wrote it were mapping their entire cosmos, defining Israel's place within it, and creating a system that would preserve their identity for millennia.